Let me ask you a question, which you were talking about before. You were basically saying this guy got paid by Big Sugar to say that this was healthy, right? At what point do other people, uh, uh, it's so weird because there's so many levels, right? You got your doctor, it depends on your doctor, right? Do you have a doctor that says write an RX, get a check, right? Do you have a doctor? I worked for a guy named Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld as he got older and he became a millionaire and decided millions was enough, didn't need billions. He started, he was honest. He's like, no, don't take Lipitor, eat this, right? Don't take iron tablets. You got red meat, right? Don't, take fat burners as a supplement. You got dark chocolate, or certain things. And California avocado is, not one of your favorite things, but like one of the top 10 fat burners according to them. Um, at what point do doctors take responsibility, right? At what point are they not just patsies for big pharma? I mean, where is there anywhere in between that? Or do they just have marching orders? Like I'll give you an example. Like in California, like Gavin Newsom tried to pass a bill saying that if anyone speaks out against the COVID vaccine, they'll lose their license. That's not nice.
It was worse than that in Australia. I mean, if you see
Please. Hmm.
Anthony Chafee, who is the sort of carnivore god at the moment, he's a friend of mine. He's wonderful,
Hmm.
but he's carnivore neurosurgeon and working in Australia. And he told me that if you speak out there, you not only lose your license, but they throw you in jail. And so, there are a lot of people frightened to speak out. I have a good friend called Dr. Ahmad Malik. I've been on his show. He's been on mine, and he's also speaking at upcoming conference and did at the last one. But his whole career has been destroyed. He spoke out against all the jabs and whatever. And he was just an orthopedic surgeon. I mean, he had nothing to do with the jabs or anything. I say just an orthopedic surgeon. I love surgeons. I think they're great. I think it's one of the really good parts of modern medicine. And he was fixing people's ankles, never had any problems, and then he started speaking out, and hospitals started dropping him one by one, private hospitals he was operating at, and he ended up being left with absolutely no income whatsoever. And he told me that he was at a party and a couple of other doctors came up and they said, "Oh, we've heard your podcast. People should subscribe to this podcast. Fantastic. It's called Doc Malik Honest Health or whatever." But brilliant stuff. And these docs came up to him and said, "Hey, you're brilliant. Oh, we're so amazed. We're so proud of you speaking out and all that. Well done. You're a hero." And he said, "Oh, thanks very much. And what are you doing?" Um, uh, um, and they're too frightened to do anything.
Yeah.
And this is happening all over the place. I mean, there are some docs who they get that Dunning-Kruger effect so much, don't they?
Hmm.
Where they think they're absolute experts because they've been to this brainwashing university that tells them exactly what they do and how brilliant they are and all of that sort of thing. And then they think that they know everything, so they don't bother to research further. I mean, I think that's one level of docs. And then there's the ones who
That's right.
start to suspect, but then they get worried about losing their income. So they've got a mortgage, they got big cars, they got a couple of ex-wives to support or something like that. And so they freak out and they don't say anything. But then I think when they really know that something is horrendously wrong and they carry on, I think this is despicable cowardice. And I think they've got to do it because if all the ones who are like that suspected, then who suspected started speaking out, then it would crumble because they couldn't stop it. But then the ones who are speaking out, I mean, I think they're tremendous heroes. I love it. I love it when a doc speaks
I
out. I think
mean,
it's fantastic.
they really
They
are.
always get attacked.
Hmm.
They get attacked. They lose their livelihood and whatever. And then people say, "Oh, they're lying. They're spreading misinformation." What is their motivation? That's what I'd ask.
And
Then,
wow.
you know,
Yeah, please. You're on a roll. I was going to say, but you got it. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. What is their motivation? Oh, well, they're selling books. No, seriously, hardly any of them have written a book. And even if they have, good for them. But they've had their careers taken away that they loved. Malik loved operating and he's not operating anymore. And he might never operate again until the medical system turns completely right round because nobody will have him. And this is the tragedy of it. So,
Yeah.
they just get they get forced out But when they do speak out, and then people say, well, they're just spreading misinformation, really ask, what is their motivation? They go through hell because of this. All their colleagues turn against them. They get slammed on, they get their channels pulled. They get everything. They get investigated. They get, why would anybody want to do that? I would say these are the people that are speaking the truth, right?
Hmm. Well, I
Yeah.
would also suggest that the people that argue against you, it's so weird to hear them say follow the money. It's so weird to hear them say, oh, well, who stands to profit? I'll bet your guy is, because all of a sudden he's your guy because you agree with this person's assessment. You might not even agree with his politics, right? But all of a sudden that's your guy because that cognitive, that mass formation has to put people into teams, into gangs, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think you're right. I was just gonna start where you were, but you said it so eloquently, and of course you have a British accent, so the Americans will appreciate it because if if they didn't know you were smarter than me before, you opened your mouth and removed all doubt. He's got the accent. He knows more than Jason. Um, but on top of what you just said, and I'd like to repeat it, these are people that have everything to lose and really nothing to gain except helping people, right? So and they're doing this. They're risking their job, their livelihood, their reputation, friends, even family members who are so far gone one way. You're willing to lose that, but I also want to take that and I want to throw a little extra mustard on this sandwich. Okay, most of these doctors, and this is my conspiracy rabbit hole, almost all of these doctors, until they said this thing that other people disagree with, before this, were in the best in their field. They were like Dr. J. Bhattacharya, freaking Harvard guy, right? The guys that started the look it up, guys. I forgot the declaration. What's it called again? It's in 2020. It's March 2020. The Barrington Declaration. Basically, it was led by three scientists and doctors. One's from Harvard, one's from Oxford, and one's from Stanford. That petitioned for in March 2020 for an alternative form of treatment. They're like, we know we got a lockdown. We know that there's a vaccine on the way. It could be a year, or maybe Trump's right. Maybe it's Operation Warp Speed, right? But we need to work on other forms of treatment. And what happened in the United States via mass email was the leader of the NIH and NIH and CDC had a chain email saying that we have to shut down this conversation. So to me, if the truth is on your side, what's the problem? Right? What's the problem? You would want to crush someone like this in front of, with everyone watching, to show that your way is the right way and trust the science, if you will, right? But instead, you're taking these people who Malone, Dr. Malone, was one of the innovators of the mRNA technology, right? So, do you watch basketball?
No, I
No,
don't. I'm so sorry.
you're a football fan. Football, I say, football carefully.
No, nothing. No, 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 absolutely no ball games
All right.
at all.
Well, I'll
I
just
never.
put it this way for my fans listening. All right. You want to know more about basketball. You got 5 NBA players. One of them you heard of, four of them you haven't. And on the other side of the bench, you got LeBron James. You're probably going to walk up to LeBron James and want to talk to basketball about him. Why? Because he's in the top of his field. And that was the point I was trying to make, that even a guy who doesn't watch ball sports could appreciate.
I know
And
who he is. Yeah,
yeah, but and that was the point I was trying to make. Like,
yeah, yeah,
look, we don't watch wrestling, but we know who Hulk Hogan was, right? Right?
yeah, yeah.
So right, we know who.
Well, you know why they did it.
Please
You
go
know
ahead.
why they censored these people,
Hmm.
because if there's any alternative treatment, any treatments, then they can't bring in the emergency use authorization.
Tell our audience about that. Talk to my
Yeah.
audience about that.
Well, they had to bring it in, didn't they, to sort of pretend that everybody needed it and to get these jabs out there. They
Right.
wouldn't have been allowed these mandates and the emergency use authorization if there were any other products, any other treatments that worked. That's why they had to stamp on hydroxychloroquine
Right.
and all of that kind of thing. They had to
Monoclonal
kind of
antibodies, right? Ivermectin was like this. All of a sudden,
ivermectin.
Ivermectin. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, ivermectin. I mean, it was a Nobel Prize winning drug, wasn't it, or something?
Yes.
And It's been used safely all over the world. I mean, I don't even
It's
think
under
you
the
need.
World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
aspirin in your in your cabinet was deemed this evil horse dewormer.
yeah, exactly. And I think, I don't think you even need that.
No.
But, if you eat right and live right, you don't need any of this crap. But it certainly was a hell of a lot safer for curing, or at least taking away the symptoms of the common cold than anything else. And, they had to bring these jabs in, didn't they? And they had to, I mean, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? I mean, the amount of damage that's being done by these things now, it's undeniable, absolutely undeniable.
And people
I've
still don't
even
want to talk
seen.
about it. And they still don't want to talk. It's like, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's even coming into the mainstream. The past couple of days, I've seen articles in the Telegraph,
Hmm.
of MPs saying that people should be prosecuted for not bringing out awareness of the jab damage. And it's so obvious now. I mean, even in my circle of friends and musicians and whatever, I've lost some. I've seen people damaged by it, and I do consults. I mean, what
Hmm.
I do basically for my main living is consult with people who have health issues, particularly autoimmunity, but also some cancer people come to me. And I'm if they're in a real bad way, I might well send them off to my friend Sophia Clements at Paleomedicina in Hungary, who is utterly brilliant. Also on my podcast, well worth a listen to her. She's incredible. But her, that I'm seeing so many complicated issues. Before they started doing this, it was quite simple. People were sick because they'd eaten the wrong stuff. They'd got leaky gut, and this gets through, and then they get autoimmunity, whether it's multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, whatever. It can be fixed with diet and lifestyle. But when I started to see these cases, these turbo cancer cases, people come to me and go, "Oh, I've been totally healthy, and I've just been diagnosed at stage 4 with this or that, ovarian, breast, stomach cancer, whatever." And I always ask that awkward question, have you been jabbed? Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm up to date with my, I go, my heart sinks because it's an unknown quantity. I have some ideas about what can help with it to get rid of that stuff out of your body, but nobody really knows yet because we don't really even know what they put in them. And there were different batches. Some batches were real kill shots. Some batches just messed you up a bit, and some were maybe even saline. And so there are people out there who can say, "Oh, I've had all the jabs and I'm still really healthy." They probably didn't have any jabs. They probably just had the saline. But it's very difficult at that point not to really put three or four tinfoil hats on, one on top of the other,
Hmm.
and say, "Is there some depopulation agenda?"
Well, they won't even
This
allow,
this was
but
it's so
they won't even allow you to say that. Like someone, perfectly good athlete has a heart attack on the field or like a cardiac or whatever, right? Um, bef- the news comes out before anyone thinks he had the jab or whatever. I'm like, who said anything about the jab? No one said anything about the jab. You just did because you're on this automatic defense. And I hate that they're not actually exploring the science or the blood work about it. It was their animal impulse to say, don't even bring the jab up. We're not gonna go there, right? And that's not science. That's religion. That's not.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. Do you agree? That's not called science. That's called
totally.
religion. So, and here's my thing, because you go completely one way, and me, my empathy has to work both ways, because for me, I think if I felt as strongly as they did, I would be as passionate about them. So I'm a little bit more forgiving, because you had a lot riding on this, right? You have your kids. People were worried about their kids, even though the kids were like not even quantifiable in the stat, right? Uh, um, you had a lot riding on it, so there was a whole bunch of that going on. But what upset me, here's where my rubber met the road. If you said this is an experimental vaccine, it's better than nothing, right? We don't understand a lot about it, but if you want to take it here, let try it, and that's fine, right? But that's not what happened, right? In fact, I'm not even. I'm gonna let my girl Batya Unger Sagar say it. All right, I'm gonna play you a clip that says everything I'm about to say. Let's go here.
information, you make up your own mind. Or even if they had said, here's the study, here's our interpretation of it, here's what we recommend based on this study in like a respectful way, I don't think they would have had such a hard time now saying, hey, actually that study was wrong, here's where we're going now. It's the fact that what they said was, they didn't say, here's this information, you make up your own mind. They said, this is the truth. And anybody who doesn't agree with us is a grandma killer, is an idiot, is a moron, hates Americans, is individualist and not caring about the collective, is disgusting. Cable news anchors lecturing you, mocking you if you don't agree with them, right? The amount of kind of condescension that they built into this. We are the science. In this house, we follow the science, right? The amount
Yeah.
of moral preening that they built into their approach to this, right, makes it now much more difficult for them to admit that they had been wrong, right? Which is a lesson to us all, always approach the things you think with a little bit of humility to the people who don't agree with you, because otherwise you're going to be in the situation where it is extremely embarrassing, to have been wrong.
And that's what I wanted to say, but I'm like, you know what? I actually have a clip. That is 1 minute to 16 seconds of just explosion. And that's Batya Ungersager. She's a journalist, an American journalist. And the other guy who's trying not to get fired by his network was like, you could see his face like he agrees, right? And that's
Yeah.
the other big secret. We all know. Dude, you ever seen Saturday Night Live when The Rock The Rock was a guest on Saturday Night Live, and he and Saturday Night Live is not even funny anymore. So this is a way old episode. They're just ridiculously not funny. But he's Clark Kent, right? And he's Superman. So he's like, oh, there's trouble, and everyone of the daily whatever planet knows he's Superman. All right, bye Clark. And when he leaves, they all start laughing. Watch him come back as Superman. So he comes back as Superman, right? Then when he comes back as Clark Kent, you can see the red cape like sticking out of the collar, and this and that, and the muscles are still bulging. And it's like this ridiculous inside joke. Like, everyone knows you're Superman. Let's just stop. Let's just stop pretending. And that's how we feel about this. Now, I'm gonna shape my question because I know I'm blathering a little bit, but it's related to the UK that didn't make America, and only independent journalists shared this. So what happened when this came out? Like she said, cable news anchors lecturing you, right? Rachel Maddow saying that it's the vaccines, the virus stops with every vaccinated person, right? You can't give it to someone because you can't get it. And if you can't get it, you can't give it to someone. And I mean, it wasn't just her. It was just, she's the one that's I'm highlighting because she gets paid $23,000 an episode, right? 5 days a week. She got paid to say that. And maybe you have to start believing, deceiving yourself to get that money. But what happened in the UK, and this is maybe something you could help me with. There was a parliamentary hearing where the guy asked a straight question and a straight answer to Pfizer, to a representative from Pfizer. And that question was,
the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
Was that something that was big news in the United Kingdom? Because it wasn't big news here, and only the independent journalists have shared that. It was a parliamentary hearing, and Pfizer representative under oath admitted that they never even tested it for transmission.
I've got to be honest, I haven't seen that one. I mean, I've seen them put some of these drug company execs right on the spot recently. Most of the stuff comes out of the States. But these are just clips that I might see on the high wire or something like that.
But that's a pretty big clip, don't you think?
Yeah.
For people to say in the beginning that this prevents transmission, only for the CDC director Walensky to say it doesn't, it no longer prevents transmission. She has to come clean. That was August 10th, 2021.
The problem with me is I'm open to everything, right?
Hmm.
The older I get, and I'm like 62 this year, and the
Wow.
older I get, the more I think, the more I know that I don't know, right? And so I don't know. I would not bet my life that there is such a thing as a transmissible virus in the first place. There might be, but I don't know. You know, there are so many alternative explanations for this. I mean, just imagine that, you know, when women go and share a house, they end up having their periods at the same time. Is this some virus that goes around? No, it's some kind of morphic resonance. We could have had this completely upside down. There's trillions and trillions of viruses in us at any given time. We have a virome, just as we have a microbiome and we have, you know, the balance of bacteria. We have these viruses. What are they? What do they do? Have they really isolated one and says that this does this and it, you know, wearing a muzzle will stop it jumping across to somebody else as long as they're 6 foot away? I mean, it's insane to me. And
Mm.
even if it is transmissible as a virus, you know, none of the things that they say are going to stop it are going to stop it. Putting up these stupid screens, standing 6 foot apart, you know,
Yeah. Well, that,
insane.
well,
All
that,
of the solutions were insane. So to me, it points to the fact that maybe there is no such thing as a virus. I mean, if you look at Stephan Lanka's work,
hmm.
and he's convinced, you know, that there is no such thing as a virus, and he's a
Wow.
virologist,
That's
isn't
pretty
he?
bold. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a bold statement. But the thing is, I don't really care one way or the other. I'd love it if it was proved there wasn't, because then the whole damn thing blows up. And I'm not saying you know, somebody's probably listening to this who likes a bit of virus theory and is probably saying, oh, look, he's a virus denier. No, I'm not. I don't know, but I'm not convinced. You see, everything, pretty much everything else they've ever told us, these elites who run the media and run everything, is a lie. Pretty much everything. Everything about diet, health, what's going on, climate change, complete.
Cigarettes. Cigarettes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, everything
Mhm.
is a complete lie, most of it.
Yeah.
And so, and I've just got to mention that at the moment because I mean, just in the last couple of days, we've got this. You've got to check this out. That we did this a while ago, going into all of that, a general one. So the Red Pill Revolution book. But now, just in the last couple of days, and this is a real masterpiece. I'm honored to have been a little part of it. But my friend Ben Hunt, who I run the Big Fat Challenge with, and this is out now, and it's available everywhere, really. You
Actually, I'm gonna
know,
go full screen on you.
the Red Pill Food Revolution, and you know, check it out. And we've gone through all the lies in that more specifically
Mm.
about, you know, down the centuries, how we've been lied to, what actually is the human diet, how we've been lied to on so many levels
Yeah.
about diet. And on it, once you wake up to one part of it, you wake up to all of it. Now, if I see anything on the mainstream whatsoever, it's not that I don't believe it at all. I just go, I think that's probably,
And have.
or it's a half truth, which is even more powerful. You know, it's a
Mm.
half truth with the aim of control. And if you see anything that is right, here's a problem, here's the reaction, here's the solution, and you've all got to do it for the greater good. Every time that has been done in history, it's been built, and it's been to lead in some horrific regime or control of the population. And I think you can see this at the moment. And so, does a virus exist or doesn't it? I don't know. But I do know that all these sort of ancestral ways of living and eating
Mhm.
will stop you getting sick with these kind of things. Whether these respiratory issues are just a regular seasonal detox
Right.
that usually happen around the autumn equinox and the spring equinox, and at those times they find it easy to ride that wave and fake some pandemic. So whether it's just a detox of the body throwing stuff off, or whether it is actually a virus that spreads from one person to another, I don't know. I suspect more that it is actually a seasonal detox. That makes more sense to me when you actually look at the patterns of what happens. But I don't know. But the solutions are the same, whichever it is, and none of the solutions that they put out on the mainstream are any use whatsoever.
I got. Listen, I'd like to chime in between this, okay? Because I have a very important message, all right? For YouTube purposes, the vaccine is safe and effective, okay? And prevents some transmission. So everything that this man's saying and I'm saying is absolute nonsense. The nerve, the charlatans, all right? So with that being said, I'd like to say this. Everything you're saying is correct because there's a historical pattern that happens where they have to get everybody on board. They have to do this. They have people who are perceived to be credible professionals to steer it that direction, and then the crowd gets bigger until the crowd's too big, where everyone just it's. They say the lie goes around the world twice before the truth even hits the front door, right? So it's something that by the time you even want to talk about it, it's too late, right? Now that's a historical pattern, but I'll put some mustard on this meal by saying that if they don't allow you to talk about it, that's when you know something's wrong. When they don't allow you to talk about it, right? Here's the thing. They have professionals who are like, something's wrong here. And what they do is they say that's only one guy and there's 1,000 guys who feel different, right? So, and like Bart K said, it could be a pile of crap, right? But if you stack 1,000 piles of crap on top of each other, it's still crap, right? And that's an argument I'm using now, because I'm like, you're using a bandwagon fallacy, educating our people at home just because the premise is popular that it's correct, to steer how we live our everyday lives, right? You know, and it's weird because I told you before on our last podcast, when people ask you if you're a doctor, you're not a doctor, you're not this and that. I think that what they fail to understand is there's certain things that go beyond the practice of medicine, right? Public policy, how it affects our everyday lives, socioeconomical impacts of some of the decisions. These are things that doctors are not qualified to talk about. Right. So what are we talking about qualifications? It takes a compilation of intelligent, of not even high level critical thinkers. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn, maybe someone like you and people like you on those things to put our heads together and say, here's what it is. Right. So I'd like to finish this rabbit hole that we might record or edit out or whatever by saying this, because I wanted to call this young lady, but I wanted to say this, which is escaping my mind right now. The power, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody listening, power to the patient. Power to the patient. My boss, Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld, wrote a bestseller called Power to the Patient. Knowing your rights, knowing whatever, and that these people are not there to make you do something, right? There's a Nuremberg code for that stuff. Power to the patient. At the end of the day, when someone says that you don't have the power to say yes or no, is the day we collectively have to rebel, to haul people in the court. Thank God the Supreme Court said that, that there is power in the patient. In fact, there's a New York Supreme Court judge that demanded that all the city workers that got fired for not taking the vaccine get reinstated with back pay. Of course, that's going to be appealed, but the ruling sets a precedent that just brought a lot of these independent journalists to tears. It's like, oh my God, all this work I've been doing, and finally someone said, yeah, because it feels hopeless after a while. Her name is Kim Iverson. She's a big conspiracy theorist, but I think the word truther gets a bad rap because she's an amazing journalist. And sorry.
Well, you made a great point about, what you're not allowed to speak about and the censorship, because I saw a great meme the other day which just said, it's easy to say that all the experts agree when you censor the ones who don't.
Well, that's because they're making the ones who don't seem like one person, and it's not true. Like the Barrington Declaration has to be thousands of people. Never mind the nurses and other people and the economists and all the other people that were on board. But the medical professionals alone started with 3 people in the top of their field. I'm not trying to insult Dr. Fauci. I don't even want to mention the F word here, right? There's a lot of F words I'd like to, there's a lot of F words we're not allowed to say. That's taboo in my house. But How is he more qualified than Jay Bhattacharya? How's he more qualified than Malone? How's he more qualified than Dr. Peter McCullough, who's a cardiologist, who's the most published physician in the history as far as like publications? He's the most
No.
published guy in the history of medicine, right?
Fauci is far more qualified because he's had his hand in all sorts of fake pandemics,
Yep.
all through since the 80s. You know, so he's obviously far more qualified to
Can
get
you-
involved in this.
Can you tell our audience what happened with Fauci in the 80s?
I don't know
Would
really.
you allow me?
But you can do it with the AIDS thing and all the
I
you
will
know,
just
take-
tell you. I'll tell you where my personal experience.
Yeah.
All right, because if I
It
start
depends
speaking,
how much you can actually say on it. I don't know. Go on.
yeah, but
you go.
no, I will not flag to be speaking upon my personal experience about a guy who is at the top of his field, who is worshipped, who is an American icon, you know, who helped bring us through the vaccine that is safe and effective and prevents some transmission and severe infection. 1986 on ABC Channel 7, the AIDS. This is around the AIDS pandemic, right? Or epidemic, or whatever you call it, and everyone was just scared, right? We got through venereal disease. You just take a shot. You got herpes, all right. You keep that forever like luggage, and now you got this thing that's just killing people, right? Like Eddie Murphy said, what happens next? You just stick your penis in and it explodes, you know? So so on ABC, this man goes on TV and says that AIDS or HIV is no longer a sexually transmitted disease or shared by needles. You can get it through casual contact. This man said this on national TV.
We may be starting to see, as we're seeing virtually as the months go by, other groups that can be involved, and seeing it in children is really quite disturbing.
When you say other close contact, give me some examples.
Well, for example, if the close contact of a child is a household contact, perhaps there will be a certain number of cases of individual who are just living with and in close contact with someone with AIDS or at risk of AIDS, who does not necessarily have to have intimate sexual contact or share a needle, but just the ordinary close contact that one sees in normal interpersonal relations.
He's basically saying you can get AIDS through casual contact. So now this is a problem, because now you have people who are homophobic, right? And you have people that are against gay people, but then you have some people who if you're gay, fine, I'm straight, I don't care. Do your thing, I'll do mine. But so now you got this crowd that didn't care, that are now afraid of gay people because if they think if they share a toilet seat that a gay person had, that they're going to get AIDS. This man started that. And of course, came up with the solution that had like an AZT that made things even weirder. That's where you can take over the conversation.
I know several people who were sort of diagnosed HIV positive back in the 80s, and they're absolutely fine because they took nothing, and they lost most of their friends who took the AZT. It's the same scenario now. Mm-hmm. It's the pharma company is just killing people, and they don't realize, because the whole thing about AIDS, the autoimmune deficiency syndrome, there always was an autoimmune deficiency syndrome. I mean, except it wasn't in capitals. It was just a regular problem. And so they've lumped a whole load of things under that banner, pretending that it's AIDS. A whole load of crazy stuff went on around that. It's just like polio, you know. I mean, There are loads of, they just changed the name. So you've got like transverse myelitis or whatever it is, you know. So they change. Oh, look, we've wiped out polio with the vaccine. You know, they haven't. In fact, Bill Gates is causing a load of polio cases, and I think he got thrown out of India for that, for causing a load of polio cases with his vaccine.
Jeez.
You know, and you can see the pattern of this. That these weird diagnoses. I mean, to me, it's really simple. There is only one disease that the human body gets, and that's mitochondrial dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And what are the things that ruin the functioning of the mitochondria? Stress, artificial light, EMFs, lack of grounding, lack of sunlight, ridiculous amounts of inflammatory foods. All of these things ruin the functioning of the mitochondria. You take away those problems and the body fixes itself. You know, the body is the best physician in the world. It knows how to do stuff that doctors will never understand.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, if you break a leg, please go to the hospital. But if you've got a chronic disease, run in the opposite direction. That is the worst place you can go.
Right.
You'll get stuck in the system and you'll get poisoned. And they have never, ever, ever cured a chronic disease. Not ever. Not once.
And it's the most expensive thing you'll ever do in America. I mean, medications like I call it dying in America is the most expensive hobby you can do post retirement or before retirement.
You know, the worst thing for me is you see these people getting completely bankrupted, you know, and then they get nothing left to leave their kids, and then they get in debt because they've had to sell their house and maybe all this stuff. It's one of the leading causes of bankruptcy, isn't it, in the States, is medical bills.
Yeah.
And the tragic thing for me is when I see a child getting cancer and then the medical system kills them with chemo, and then afterwards the parents have got such Stockholm syndrome that they then start up these sort of fundraisers for cancer research and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that to me is heartbreaking. And there's nothing you can say because these people have just lost a child and you don't interfere, right?
Yeah.
You don't say, look, the medical system have killed them and you've made the wrong choice to take them for this chemo and whatever. But the trouble is with a child, then if you get some cancer diagnosis and you don't go down that route, then the social services can take the child away.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Or force them to have it. I mean, the whole system is satanic. It really is. There's some great people in it, and surgeons are fantastic and all of that. You know, steroid shots for somebody who's got anaphylactic shock or they'll die. You know, antibiotics when it's life-threatening, not when you go in there because you sneezed once.
Right.
You know, all of these things. There are some useful things, but it takes a lot of discrimination to understand what is useful about the medical system and what is, I would say, evil, real satanic practice. And then they brainwash people into thinking that they're doing good. And a lot of these docs have great intentions. They do, but they just don't know better.
Right.
And you know, when somebody says to me, "You're not a doctor, who the fuck do you think you are?" I take it as a compliment now, because I would hate to be a doc. I know most of these carnivore docs, you know, who've come across and educated themselves properly. Mm-hmm. Fantastic people. But, you know, it was like a story I've told before, but when my mother, she was like 93, she had breast cancer, great big lump in there, you know, and there's a video on my YouTube channel of it reversing. And when we did reverse it, the oncologist sort of examined her. I didn't say anything. He thought I was nuts. And he turned around and he said, you could see him sort of stop. And he turned around and he went, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I've been telling you all along how I'm going to do it, you know. I wasn't sure it would work, but it did. Hey, great, here it is." And I said, "That you're an oncologist, and is that the first natural cancer reversal you've ever seen?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm a drummer, and I've seen several."
Yeah. Look.
And I really enjoyed that little bit of revenge served cold. You know, he was actually a nice guy. He was more of a surgical oncologist. His money didn't depend on pushing the drugs. So he was a lovely guy. He wasn't open. He thought I was mad, but at least he laughed and didn't get aggressive like some of them.
Yeah.
But you know, I've had horrible run-ins with rheumatologists who have actually ended up really shouting at. Well, one in particular ended up actually really shouting at me because I wouldn't take his drugs. He went mad, went absolutely crazy, and I'd only gone back to show him how I'd fixed it. You know, and all the people.
You thought he would just like applaud the good news. He sees someone that's perfectly healthy, and yeah,
they're not interested though, because you know, it's very difficult to convince a man of something when his livelihood depends on not being convinced of it.
Well, I think one of the other lines of defenses for this level of cognitive dissonance is, and you'll love this one. Are you saying this person's not a good person? Are you saying, and it's the biggest non sequitur. Are you trying to say my doctor's not a good person? My doctor's trying to hurt me, you know? And I'm like, all right, being a good person and what they're afraid of are these things are both factual, but if you can't make a logical connection of someone to be a good person and what good people are unaware of, one, or what good people are aware of, but their self-preservation, right, is the essence of sanity. You know, Freud said that. Your preservation of self and your family, I guess, when I say self. Like their wife, their kids, or everything they worked for. College loans to they're 79 years old, only to risk losing that. So there is a mind your thing that makes someone not a great person, but just a normal person, not a bad person either, right? So that was the other mechanism. Are you trying to say that this person's deliberately trying to hurt you? I'm like, no, I'm trying to say that he might not know any better because you have MDs on TV saying ivermectin is a horse dewormer, right? And you have a pothead comedian, Joe Rogan, saying, no, and I can afford the real drug, mother. Why is your network, why are doctors on your network saying I'm taking a horse pill, right? So I think the point you were trying to make was the doctors have a decision to make because the patients collectively all over the world know the power is still theirs, and that's the most important thing. I will not edit out of this podcast that I will keep in the power. The patient at the end of the day, and as long as there's informed consent, there's a mutual responsibility here, right, between the doctor and patient, informed consent. But the patient should ultimately make the decision, right? I'm a sports guy. There's a guy named Alex Smith. He had an infection on his leg. He had a leg injury. He's out of the NFL. And the first doctor he saw said it had to be amputated. Did he say, I trust the doctor, I trust the science? Go ahead, doc, get the knife, give it the chop? No, he didn't. He says, I'm going to seek a second opinion. The second opinion, the doctor says, not so fast. Let's treat it with antibiotics. Let it run its course and see what happens. He listened to the second doctor. He has both his legs. He made it back to the NFL. At the end of the day, you're good enough or not. But the point is, it's the top 1% of 1% of all American football players. And he was back from an injury where if he listened to the first guy, he would be wheeling into Washington Stadium, wheeling in, and everyone giving him a round of applause and talking about how brave he is. No, he went in with both legs and got behind someone's big fat 300-pound behind and said, hike. Okay. Blue 32, hike. See the booty. So that's the biggest thing I wanted to get out of this. I want you, before we go, let's just plug your site, your Insta handle, and for sure, I'm gonna order that book today because I didn't know until last night that you had a new one out. I know you're talking about it on the podcast, but when I started catching up to Phil Escott, to prepare me for today, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot how much fun this guy is. So the camera's yours. Let's do it. Let's show that book. Sorry, go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for letting me do some plugs at the end. Well, for our events, we've got events coming up. Ben and I run these through the Big Fat Challenge, and you can find them at Big Fat Challenge, thebigfatchallenge.com. You can find the book anywhere, Amazon and whatever. The Red Pill Food Revolution by Ben Hunt, and our various contributors, which I was one. And I think really the easiest thing, maybe if this is going out on YouTube or whatever, I'll send you, Jason, my link tree, and then absolutely everything's listed in there. It's if somebody's out there with some autoimmunity and would like a consult. I mean, when I think back to my time of that agony and how long it took me to figure out what to do and how to how to see through all the lies and get confidence. And it would have saved me years. So I love it. I really, really enjoy consulting with people, and I love seeing their healing stories. So, that there's a link under there to my consults on my website. But and the Big Fat Challenge, which Ben and I do for sort of ongoing support, and all the resources you need inside the Big Fat Challenge. If you go to the page, that'll be on the link tree as well. If you go to the page, Ben and I have a little video there where we explain and take you through the members area of everything that's there, and all the resources you get. So that's pretty much me. It'll all be in the link tree. It's always easier to just send one link, then people can go browse it, instead of sending you hundreds on email to go or whatever. I have my YouTube channel is just Phil Escott. Instagram, I don't use it much. I really should pick up, but I am on there. I'll probably Phil Escott or something. You search it and find it. Not so much on there. But yeah, Facebook groups, 100% Carnivore and Beyond, Rheumatoid and Psoriatic Arthritis Facebook group too. They'll all be on the they'll all be on that link on the link tree. I also have a autoimmunity, the subtraction course, which is a 30 video online course for reversing autoimmunity. And yeah, there we go. My book's on there. Arthritis, best thing that ever happened to me. That's on Amazon. They're all on Linktree.
Yeah,
There we go.
that was a heck of a book, by the way. I really enjoyed it, and I have it over there somewhere. I usually do a lightning round at the end, but a lot of those things are like bourbon, vodka, tequila. You probably don't even drink. Favorite sport outside of volleyball? I'm skipping all that. But who is your favorite comedian? Do you have a favorite comedian?
I think my favorite comedian is actually Sean Locke. He's an English guy. He died recently.
Yeah. Wow,
But
God
he
bless.
was just masterful. He was absolutely hilarious. I loved Bill Hicks, George
Mm.
Carlin.
Yeah,
You know, the
George
people who
Carlin is
really who
he's the
really
goat.
really rip the hell out of the medical system and every system, the elites and whatever. You know, I
My
love
f-
that when
my
they really
favorite
get
line
it.
from George Carlin is, yeah, all life is precious until the kid is born. I was like, and then it's like you don't want to pay for nothing and this and that. So yeah, my favorite comedian is Dave Chappelle. I like him a lot because
Yeah, he's cool too.
he's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
much like George Carlin, even though there are levels to that. Like but Dave Chappelle has when you get attacked and when you get attempted canceled and you're still there, there's something to be said about you being, I don't know. I'll leave by saying this, and this is where some comedians fail. Once you fail at keeping your oath to the office of comedy, you cease to be funny. Stephen Colbert used to be funny. He ain't funny no more. I can't watch him anymore. You know, a lot of these guys are just. I just felt like they sold out, and then they're not funny anymore because they didn't keep their oath to the office of comedy. You, my man, have kept your oath to the office of general health, the quality of life,
I
hence
see.
hence
I mean,
leading to the sanctity of life.
no, I agree, and it's been very disappointing not only in comedy but in the music business as well, and the amount of people that have swallowed the crap. And you know, I'm also in a band called the Daz Band, and that's just dazband.com. That's on the link tree as well. But we did that. We brought out that single of the thing that Daz wrote ages ago, actually, of you know, we are the 99%. You can shove your poison vaccines up your ass. You can shove the New World Order up your ass, all of that. And we got a terrible cover for it. We actually got it to number one in Christmas before last, I think it was, or the one before that. We got it, I can't remember, but it was Daz wrote it ages ago, and it went round the world. You know, it was around all the freedom rallies. The people were singing it and everything ages before we even recorded it. And you know, we've got a new album out as well, and that's on Linktree too. But you know, check out Daz and his Light Paper, and he's also the editor and founder of the Light Paper, which you know is a great truth paper in England. Got a great circulation. He's done brilliantly. And I, you know, I heard him playing that song at a party one day, you know, during lockdown when we went for a nice tinfoil hatters party, you know, at somebody's house, you know, blowing up all the rules and getting together and hugging each other. And he
Yeah.
played that song. I said, "Oh, is that yours?"
Mhm.
Yeah, cool. Okay, let's do a band. And it's been a lot of fun. We played all the festivals and got to meet all kinds of people like David Icke and whatever
I'm
that's
like,
been
wait,
talking.
this wasn't at the French Laundry, was it in California?
No,
the,
no, no,
the
no.
the party that Gavin Newsom had where nobody had a mask.
Oh, nice.
Magic Johnson was at that party.
Yeah.
The poster boy for the immunocompromised. No mask.
No, but I mean, it's funny. It's like an old colleague of mine said, it's the virus that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Whether that, you know, because it's although it's broken up families and whatever, it's brought some great people out. It's shown people's true character,
Yeah.
and you know, I think it's time for this great awakening.
It's
And I'm
well,
very, very positive. I
it
think people are waking up, and it's beautiful.
well for me personally, it's cleansed my friends list.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it cleansed itself. Like you wear a shirt like this
Yeah, yeah.
too. You wear a shirt like this. Anyone who's triggered, right, is automatically it kind of took care of itself. Professionally, that maybe there's some things I probably shouldn't say that might hurt my brand, but at the same time, my brand and my bottom line are not. They're independent of each other. So if my brand gets hurt, it doesn't hurt how I get paid. I'm already taken care of in there. You know, I got some money put away. I worked in cardiology for 17 years, and then my wife's in finance. So the amount of money they pay you to talk about money is insane. So yeah, and I'll give you a piece of advice from a younger man to an older one. If you're not a millionaire by the time you're 50, make sure you're married to one. All right. So,
That's good advice.
so with that being said, this guy might love you, but I don't love any of you guys. In fact, I can't stand any of you. In fact, we're out of here. Okay. So for all of you at home, for all of you on your iPads, for all of you on your droids, if that still exists, for all of you on your desktop that exists, who runs the world? Old school. For my man, Phil Escott, I'm Jason DeBeas. This is episode 198 of the Option Podcast. Stay with me. I'm going to hit my music, but we are out of here. Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.